Alright, what's up guys? Welcome back to Gaming News Weekly. Now there is a ton for this show, so we're going to get right into it and we're going to leave out a lot of superfluous stuff. So I hope you're ready. Let's go. Right away, we're going to start off with some disheartening news. The Suikoden series creator and the lead guy on Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes has sadly passed away from illness. My heart goes out to Yoshitaka Murayama and his family. I wish them nothing but the best. Next up, we got another Switch 2 report coming out. Yay! Clap your hands if you never heard that before. Obviously, we all know the Switch is coming to the end of its life, and the second iteration, whatever the next console is going to be, should be on the way soon. And it's going to be here at some point this year, maybe next year, whatever. But insiders are always claiming they know when the next one is. I don't believe them for a second. It's going to come when it's going to come. It could be this year sometime, holiday-ish, or it could be, Q1 next year, which is what the newest reports are saying. Either way, we know what's coming. The original Switch is still selling, which boggles my mind. It's so far behind at this point in terms of console, but it's true that it still has games that people want to play. And so whether it's the new ones that are coming out or replacing their systems because they broke like mine, or whatever the case is, the Switch is still selling. So from a business perspective, it makes sense to not move on to the next console. But who's to say when it's going to happen? It's coming, right? So as there's more out there that's like legitimate news, I will share that with you. But otherwise, just you're going to be hearing Switch 2 rumors all the time. Next up is Embracer Group. Now this has been a really interesting one, and I think there's more to this story than really even just this news block allows. But essentially, this is a group that had a bunch of investors, got a bunch of capital, bought a ton of studios, had a ton of games in development. We were all praising them, right? Because they were taking the AA game approach. They were remastering games that haven't been there for a long time that we all wanted. They were kind of doing this middleman thing that isn't in the gaming industry much anymore, and all of us were excited about it. Unfortunately, they hedged their bets on something that didn't come through, and now they are in panic mode. And part of that is they are laying off tons and tons and tons of workers. They canceled loads of games. As of right now, we've heard about 29. I don't know if that number is correct or not. It's hard to know, but it's a lot. They've been closing studios, laying people off. They just don't have the capital that they thought they were going to have. And then they go out and say something really stupid, right? The CEO comes out and says that they are always looking out for their shareholders and that they base it on their organic growth that hasn't been able to be sustainable. But that's garbage, right? It wasn't organic growth. You bought studios, which again, everyone is like lambasting them now because of their laying off so many people. But we have to remember, they were doing things that we all celebrated, and then they got bit, right? The money was supposed to come through, did not. Part of that is their fault because they put a bet on something that they didn't have, and they put people's lives and their work and their financial well-being in the hands of this group, wherever they were expecting to get the money from, and then it wasn't there. And now everybody has to pay for that bet. That's a sucky thing, but it's not the same as what everybody is hating them for. Everybody is hating on Embracer Group like they are the worst thing ever in the industry. And I certainly agree that what has happened and the way they're going about it now is awful. And so I don't think that we should completely negate the negative press that they're getting, because they deserve it at least to some degree. But I also think that we tend to jump ship, right? We pendulum swing from they're the best thing ever in gaming to, oh my goodness, they're the worst thing ever in gaming. Like, how dare they ever try to enter this space? And that's just not what it is, right? There's a middle ground, as there is in most things in life. And that is my goal as doing YouTube for you guys when we talk about news, is to bring that middle ground. And I know that will not bring as many views as often, but I believe that there's enough of you out there who think this way as well, that understand there has to be a middle ground, and we don't have to be extremists on one side or the other, that there's something in the middle. And this group falls in that place, right? They have done some dumb things, but they also did some good things. And this comment was stupid, but the hate I've seen online is a bit much, as it typically is in this space. So just remember that when you look at this story, that it was humans making a bet, making a decision, and they messed up. They failed, right? And now, yes, it sucks because people are having to pay for those decisions that didn't get to make those decisions. Again, that seems to be the kind of go-to in our industry, and it sucks. But it's not this one extreme side or the other. All right, next up, little news, but kind of funny, is we got word that 2K Games, who make, NBA 2K and whatever, have been selected to make the next FIFA title. I think that totally makes sense as far as a pick, but it is funny. You feel like the online portion with loot boxes and everything else that's been having a hard time over the years is just gonna come back. So that'll be a fun one to watch. A little bit of barn burning maybe, right? Next up, we got some cool news about No Rest for the Wicked. If you haven't seen that, this is the one that is brought to you by Moon Studios, who made the Aura games. And this is a third-person action RPG, which at first, everyone, including me, thought it looked like Diablo. And it definitely has some of that DNA. But IGN just had first hands-on whatever, and it's got 8 minutes of gameplay. And if you go watch it, it actually is very different. The combat is way more intentional and slow. You're not just spamming big moves, laying out hordes. You're more intentional, more thoughtful, and more impactful. And I am actually very excited about that. I think it looks really good. I like the idea of it. I'm still interested in some things that we don't know and will want to find out more about it. But I think it's looking really good. And it did get a delay, small, but a delay to Q2 of 2024. That's, about a 2 to 3 month delay. I don't think that's a big deal. I think that is totally reasonable. They're working on a game. That kind of thing happens. But I'm actually really excited for this one. And if you are, let me know in the comments what you're thinking about this one. But I think it's actually looking really good. Oh, and it also announced it has a showcase to show off more of the game on March 1st. So if this is a game you're interested in or are really looking forward to, March 1st is the time to go watch and see what they have to show. I think if you are already set that you're going to buy this game, it's probably not worth it to watch that. But if you are on the fence or are just interested and trying to figure out if it's one that you will want, then that March 1st showcase is probably worth the time. That is one that I will be watching because I am kind of on the fence. I'm thinking it looks good. I'm liking what I'm seeing, but I'm not completely sold yet. So I will actually be checking that out, and then I'll let you guys know how it goes. All right, another little thing that happened was Baldur's Gate 3, little depending on who you're talking to, Baldur's Gate 3 just passed 500,000 positive reviews on Steam. That may seem like it's not a big deal, but 500,000 people to give your game a review on PC and to give it a positive one, to talk about it, is pretty amazing. There's not a lot of games that have that amount of user reviews on Steam, and so for Larian Studios, that's a big win. Next up is Ys 10 finally got its localization announced. Now, we still don't have the exact date set up, but it did get announced for fall of 2024. I have really enjoyed especially the later Ys games. 8 and 9 are awesome. Really, really great action RPGs. They're super good JRPG. A lot of the tropes, a lot of the silly stuff, but really fun to play. 8 in particular, the music is incredible, the gameplay is awesome, the characters are great. I am really excited for this. I love Ys. This one has a kind of a duology in character instead of having the 3 that you had in the last 2 games. And so I'll be interested to see how that plays and how they go about it. I have not been watching Japanese coverage of it because I don't want to know any more about it. But fall 2024 for Ys 10, that's good stuff. Okay, this is an interesting one. The staff, the team, the developers behind Disco Elysium have had a major shift. So I don't know if it got bought or if new guys came in over the board or how it all worked exactly, but the creators of Disco Elysium have been kicked out. About 25% of the staff have been laid off. It's not really a sequel. I don't know if it was a prequel or a DLC, but something pertaining to Disco Elysium has been canceled. whatever happened there, it just completely got thrown for a loop. Who knows exactly what happened? I mean, that kind of a shift, that kind of a reorg, right, and put it in nice terms, usually follows or precedes something big. Whether there was problems in the studio, right, if there were issues with personnel, or if there was, a lack of funds, or what the deal was, but something was happening, and then this huge shift comes. So really what that means is I wouldn't expect a Disco Elysium 2. I wouldn't expect any DLC or prequel or sequel to it. That studio is probably completely shifting gears to something different and new. And who knows what that might be. We won't know for another 4 to 5 years if they even make it. More than likely, it probably just shuts down after another year or two. So that's a really big bummer, especially if you enjoyed that game. That really sucks. But we'll keep an eye on that, and I'll let you know as we hear more about that story. But yeah, that's a bummer. All right, next up is Bandai Namco. And they've had an interesting kind of week. Found out they are one of the most profitable companies in Japan, but somehow in that they've canceled 5 games that were in development. They cited that there was longer dev cycles and there were losses in their prior quarter, and so they now have new evaluation criteria for greenlighting games. They also then sold the Elden Ring trademark, which as far as I know is just the name. So if we hear more about that, I'll let you know if anything changes. But my understanding is it's just the trademark of the name Elden Ring has been officially sold to FromSoft. So that's an interesting one. How in all of that, the Bandai held that trademark, and then why they sold it to FromSoft. Who knows? But things are in a bit of turmoil there, and so it's interesting. I'm not sure what all that entails and why they were in that place. If there are certain games or whatever that have been struggling, I don't know. But 5 games canceled is a bummer. I don't know what those are. My guess, though, is anime fighters. They have a lot of those kind of arena fighters, and as far as I know, they don't tend to do super well. They don't sell big numbers, and if they're costing more to build at this point, then they might not be worth it anymore, or they might need to scrap them and move them to cell phone only. I don't think, for those of you who might be worried, I don't think they're canceling the next Tales game. It's possible if there was a Scarlet Nexus sequel or something in development, it's possible they canceled that. I hope not, because I really loved Scarlet Nexus, but I don't know that it sold super well, right? What sells and what doesn't for them is of interest to me. So if you know more about that, let me know. But yeah, it's an interesting week for Bandai Namco. Next is Sony stuff. A lot of news came around about Sony. A lot of it was misinterpretation or misunderstandings. People, as usual, taking headlines that actually are not true and running with them. So let's get to the bottom. As I said, we try to be the middle ground here, okay? I don't like to swing for the fences and go on the outside, so we're gonna go for the middle. So what's actually happening here, as best as we can tell? The headline of Sony thinking PS5 is in its last stages is not correct. It meant they're entering into the latter half of their console, which is true, right? That means there's another 4-ish years of support, direct support for the PS5. A 7 to 10 year cycle for console is the normal, right? 7 years is right about there, right? That's what they typically are. This console generation might only go for 10 years, but it's seeming less likely of that than we first thought when they first came out. 7 to 8 years probably is more realistic. They're same as Xbox. They are both saying that, oh, we got the most powerful console, the biggest leap ever is coming for the next console. What does that even mean at this point? I mean, they are really powerful and capable of a lot, so what makes it the biggest technical leap? Who knows? But there is some interesting things that did come out of that are true. I don't think they're as big a deal as some people, though. Sony did say that they will not be releasing any major first-party titles until next fiscal year, which means after March 31st of next year. So not 2024, we're talking March of 2025. To some people, that is a big deal. People who love Sony first-party stuff, that's sucky. And I get that. But Naughty Dog had something in the works, right? Their big live service Factions game got canceled. They pushed out a remaster of The Last of Us 2, but that's it. They had to cancel their big game. So whatever they're working on now, they probably are only 2 to 3 years into. They're not going to be ready this year. Ghost of Tsushima was not that long ago. Yes, it was in the PS4 life, but it was in the end of the PS4 life. So another year plus to work on the next title makes sense, right? With game development times, especially for big, single player first party type stuff, being about 5 years, 4 to 5 years for those titles, it makes sense to me that they are not ready this year. Okay? Insomniac has been slamming stuff out. They gotta be chill, right? The Spider-Man 2 just came at the end of last year. To have another big title, which as far as we know, right, is Wolverine, probably beginning of 2025. So that, with this being said, it's probably not till April, May. That still makes sense. I mean, a year and a half between titles is really amazing, right? So yes, they're not having anything this year, but I don't think that's a huge deal with all the other stuff that's coming exclusively to Sony. They're still gonna have a big year. Helldivers 2 is popping off. You're about to have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That's a big deal. You got tons and tons and tons of games that are coming that will sell a bunch on PlayStation. They don't need to focus on their first party stuff. I know that some people will lament that, and that's okay to have that opinion, but I don't think that it's really gonna struggle very much from Sony's perspective. Remember that we in this gaming space are actually a small minority, those of us who are online all the time, who are really plugged in, and the vast majority of people who are playing stuff are only partially into this, right? So things sell. That's why like Call of Duty sells 20 million every year, no matter how good it is and how much we all say it's terrible, because some people, they're just gonna buy it. That's why Hogwarts sold so big, because a whole bunch of people who are not plugged in just buy it, right? Because it's something they're interested in, and they're not plugged into the gaming space. They're not online all the time. They're not watching these videos, right? They're just buying stuff as they can, it's something that they like. They don't know what's coming and what's not. They just buy the things that interest them when they do come out. And so we have to always make sure that we understand the room that we have to give for the people who are not always online, that aren't complaining because they don't even know. They don't know any difference. It doesn't mean anything to them. So it's not that big a deal. People are freaking out, and there's just not really any reason to. Along with that, Far From Home, the developer of Forever Skies, signs an exclusivity deal with Sony, right? We just heard that this week, and there it is, right? Another developer signing an exclusive deal with Sony. That makes sense, right? There are developers who need a little bit of money ahead of time or help with development or whatever, and Sony picks those up. That's what they do, and it's a good investment. I think sometimes it fails, but a lot of times it's good that they get this exclusive deal with a game that they think looks good, that they think will sell or will expand their portfolio, and then people who want it have to buy into PlayStation. I understand that Phil Spencer was saying stuff about Helldivers 2 and who does that help. I totally get his point. From Sony's perspective, it helps them, right? If as Helldivers 2 is popping off, you're either going to play it on PC or you're going to play it on PlayStation. It means more people are buying stuff on PlayStation. More people are going to buy a PlayStation to play the game. That's good for them. That's how they are doing so well in the space right now. So yes, it is true that when they said that they undersold, because they did, right? Their projection was for 25 million units. They're at like 21, so they're not going to hit 25. They might get to like 22. And it is true that their stock dropped, but that's the stock market, right? So don't pay a bunch of attention to that unless you really know what's happening there. Otherwise, you are just getting lost in a space that we have nothing to do with, right? Stock moves like crazy, and it goes up and it goes down, and I'm not a financial person, so I'm not gonna dig into that. And if you are, great, help us out, let us know in the comments. Staying in our lane means that unless you are someone who deals with stocks and understands that system, that basing conjecture and ideas off of that is dumb. You just don't know enough to know that. I know I don't. So when people freak out that it dropped, I'm not so sure that they know enough to know what that means. that actually means anything for Sony. Okay, so from blue to green, what's going on with Xbox? Well, a lot, right? We had this huge thing last week about, that we talked about. The Xbox was gonna have to explain that games were gonna be going to other systems and all of this stuff, and everyone was lamenting that Xbox was dying and they're going third party and blah, blah, blah. So they have their podcast, and they got Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, and Sarah Bond sat on stools looking really uncomfortable and doing a podcast where they were answering questions. I actually thought it was pretty decent. There was a few silly things. Like, one of the first questions that they went into was, okay, we heard about games going non-exclusive, that they're going to other platforms. What are they? Phil Spencer refused to name the games. I thought that was a dumb move. We have a pretty good idea what they are, but because they refused to confirm, we don't know. But more than likely, we're talking Sea of Thieves, Hi-Fi Rush, Grounded, and Pentiment. That's it. Now, there might be something else, and will there possibly be other games down the line after they see how this goes? Absolutely. The reality of it only being 4 games means right now. It is not going to be that way forever. They will port other games. I guarantee it. They will. But that they are going to keep their main key titles and stuff exclusive to Xbox makes sense. He said explicitly, it's not Starfield and it's not Indiana Jones. I don't know that that means that they will forever not be those games, but it might not. But either way, it was weird that he decided not to name the 4 games, but he did talk about that they had to be out for over a year. They had to be smaller, titles or games that were meant to reach large audiences to bring people together. So multiplayer type games, right? So that's one aspect of it. So quit your third party lamenting. They are staying first party. They're not giving up on hardware. They talked about, same as I said earlier from Sony, that the next change, the next Xbox will be the largest leap, whatever that means as far as technical goes. Also, in this podcast, they did talk about Activision Blizzard games coming day one to Xbox. They talked about their first party portfolio always being day one, day and date on Xbox Game Pass. And part of that is that March, I believe 28th they said, but that will bring Diablo 4 into Game Pass. So that's good. Continuing their strategy of moving things into Game Pass, of buying studios that make their games. They are going to put some games on other platforms, which I am not surprised by. They've done that before. We'll see if that moves into some of their main games, but at least for now, it does not. Along with that, they did specifically mention that Game Pass will stay exclusive on the Xbox and PC, so it's not going to show up on PlayStation or Nintendo. That's not much of a surprise, in my opinion, because why would PlayStation or Nintendo want that? It doesn't make any sense. Phil Spencer did briefly touch on the Xbox layoffs. I don't think he did super well on that. I don't feel like there was enough emphasis on that. Like, that was kind of a struggle for me. I understand where he was going and why he did it that way, but I still felt like there could have been more there. They did mention that 34 million people have Game Pass. They have always kind of neglected to give us specific numbers before. 34 million is good, but it's a long ways off from the 100 million that they have talked about wanting to get to. And it's a little stagnant, which we've known that it has been. Spencer also talked about game preservation and wanting to bring the compatibility with their older titles and bringing that forward to each iteration of Xbox. That's good. I still wonder, what does that look like in 10 years? You got a next system, we're still going all the way back. Like, how is that gonna work? But it seems like they do care about that, and so I think that's good. They also hinted at their June showcase, so that is the next time we'll get one from Microsoft, which is good, and that they have at least 10 titles coming this year that are first party titles. That basically was the show. That was what they talked about. But what I think matters out of all of that is that they are pushing stuff to Game Pass, including Activision Blizzard stuff coming day one. They are planning on keeping a lot of stuff exclusive and maintaining Xbox. They are not going third party, but they are taking some games and moving them to other platforms. that was the show. So there we go, okay? And so that's this week. There are still probably things I missed. I didn't go in as much detail as I feel like we probably could have on a lot of these things, but it's a lot, right? This show's already pretty long. So if you have stuck around this long, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. Let me know down below in the comments what you've thought, what you're thinking about all of these things. If you saw some news I missed that you think we need to bring up. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button. That helps me out a ton, especially with the algorithm and all that stuff. If you're new around here, think about subscribing. It means a lot to me, and I hope to see you around. As always, thank you so much for watching, and good hunting.